America's Heartland is made possible by
They make up a small part of our population, but have a huge impact on our lives. They take business risks few others would tolerate, all on our behalf. They're American farmers who feed, fuel, and clothe the world. Monsanto would like to recognize them for all they do for the rest of us. Because ultimately, our success and everyone else's depends on theirs.
and by the American Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of agriculture.
Hi, I'm Sarah Gardner. When you're raising produce that makes its way to your dinner table, you've got to act fast. We'll take you to Michigan to show you how getting that green from the farm to your fork is an extended family affair.
It's something farmers know all too well. If you're going to work with the land, you're going to get your hands dirty. Now, not generally said about gourmet chefs, but Alabama chef Chris Hastings knows all about getting his hands dirty down on the farm. He's connecting farmers and food lovers one delicious dish at a time.
I'm Yolanda Vasquez. We're heading for Maryland to introduce you to a young farmer who's taking a very direct approach in getting his products to the dinner tables of consumers. It's all coming up on America's Heartland.
You can see it in the eyes of every woman and man in America's heartland, living close to the land. There's a love for the country and a pride in the brand. In America's heartland, living close to the land.
As Americans try to eat healthier, produce plays a larger role in our diets. But if you've ever tried to grow a garden, you know how perishable produce can be. And for one Michigan farm family, that means moving fast to get the crops from their field onto your fork.
Calling the Rulig farm a family affair is an understatement. As the eldest son, Robert, takes produce orders from distributors in Detroit, his mom, Roseanne, and younger sister, Tammy, ready fresh vegetables for delivery to wholesale markets and grocery chains.
I now have 2 girls and 2 boys, and all 4 of the family members are all involved in agriculture. Zucchini has been one of the better crops that we've grown this year.
Dad, Dave Rulig, is a 4th-generation farmer. He began working this land in the southeast corner of Michigan back in 1970. As the Rulig family grew, so did the farm. The family tapped into consumer demands from regional supermarkets for produce that could go from field to store almost overnight. Today, the family, along with hundreds of workers, grows a multitude of crops.
Well, we start off raising yellow summer and zucchini squash, and then we get into cucumbers. We do a lot of the cool weather crops like cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower, watermelons, muskmelons, sweet corn.
Each family member oversees a different aspect of the farming operation. Youngest son Jason is prepping the fields with drip irrigation for crops to be planted in the spring. He says the large workforce makes it possible to keep planting and harvesting on track. It also allows family members to focus on new procedures to improve productivity.
And you don't get that all the time, with all, hired employees. Some people, they're not looking for ways to always make things better. They may do a fantastic job doing what they're doing, but they're not always looking for good ways to improve the business. And that's what makes it nice working with a family.
At any moment, you'll find family members moving from oversight on packing operations to details on staffing and plant safety. Those delivery orders handled by Robert mean more than 1,500 truckloads of produce heading to market year-round. The farm produces some 30,000 tons of crops each year, and Robert sees his role as critical to meeting demands from consumers.
At the end of the day, you're always glad that you're producing food for people, and if you can keep your focus on the fact that you're supplying a need that is probably the most important profession on the face of the earth.
Hello, legs. Oh, and 2 other members of the family. Older daughter Chris runs the farm's front office. Her daughter, Olivia, adds vocal support when she's awake. Since Michigan winters can include months of snow and freezing weather, Dave extends his growing season by starting seedlings under glass. Once the seedlings are moved to open fields, the greenhouses are used for growing flower crops.
It all starts out in Florida, then goes to Georgia, then comes up here to the north, and we in turn send our produce down to Georgia and Florida in the summer months. Then in the winter months, the stuff they raise in Florida and Georgia comes back to Michigan.
Juggling a myriad of crops on a seasonal basis has given the family new insights on the relationship between agriculture and consumers. Robert sees it as a cooperative effort, farms responding to the public interest, and the public better understanding what it takes to put food on their table.
It should be a requirement that they come to a farm to learn about their food and where it comes from. And I think that if they did, there'd be a whole different perception about the value of the food and why it is grown and why it costs what it does and where it comes from.
As long as we're talking produce, those cucumbers and zucchini you see in the supermarket come from the same family as pumpkins, watermelon, and many types of squash. And they're juicy. Cucumbers have some of the highest water content of any vegetable.
More than ever before, consumers are trying new flavors when it comes to putting meals on the table. If that sounds like you, let's try some vegetables you may not even know existed.
It's gorgeous up here. You'll never see anything, in the water other than what belongs there.
The north coast of Maine is the scenic backdrop for a rare kind of harvest.
You see that nice honey-colored right up through here?
The crop here is seaweed, and for nearly 2 decades now, Ron Hinkle has made a living carefully pruning the plants in these waters.
It's kind of like, you could think of it kind of like a garden. Is the more I cut it and keep it cleaned and nipped up, the better, and the better the seaweed is every year. It's better and better.
It comes and goes by names like digitata, laver, dulce, and bladderwrack. As many as 8 types of seaweed are native to this stretch of the Atlantic coast.
Last year we harvested 100,000 pounds of this stuff to get 10,000 dried pounds at the end. That's a lot of work too,
Hinkle does the heavy lifting, but it was the failing health of this man's wife that turned these sea vegetables into a business.
We discovered it one day at a picnic down by the beach.
Seaweed was one of the dietary changes suggested for his wife, but imported seaweed was costly. So Shep Earhart took a chance on sea vegetables from the waters of Maine.
Luckily, somebody said, well, why don't you change your diet and see what happens? And we started eating seaweed, and it made all the difference.
This admitted hippie of the 60s pioneered drying techniques and sold his first batches by word of mouth in brown paper bags. As the business grew, Maine Coast Sea Vegetables found itself shipping seaweed across the U.S. and overseas.
But the seaweed became more of a passion when we realized that there are a lot of people in the cities who don't have access to this that really appreciate it and find it a vital part of their diet.
Asian countries have touted the benefits of seaweed for thousands of years, and many who consume sea vegetables claim significant health benefits. As the seaweed sold, the company began exploring other options to make their sea-based food products palatable to a wider audience. This is kelp mixed with sesame seeds and brown rice syrup. They call it a kelp crunch bar. This is applewood smoked seaweed. Think beef jerky. And then you have a seaweed seasoning, a sort of low-sodium salt shaker from the sea.
Kelp in soups is a no-brainer. It adds its richness. If you're cooking it, a bean soup or even a stew, put a little bit of kelp in there. It's like putting pork in your beans.
As in any farming operation, producers pay attention to sustainability. It's a lesson Ron Hinkle learned the hard way after one of his early harvests.
We overcut it, because it was just too easy. Oh, there's a big bunch right here, we'll just cut it, and the next year, nothing. And it was 6 or 7 years before it ever come back.
Creating the right environment for future harvests demands cooperation from everyone who works these waters.
It's a common myth that your fisherman isn't interested in sustainability, and we've been able to use word of mouth and actually create a sustainable harvest up and down the coast of a lot of different varieties of seaweed.
At Maine Coast Sea Vegetables, sustainability is a pursuit by sea and by land.
That's a pretty nice piece, nice and clear.
Earhart says his desire to provide quality, user-friendly foods demands a balance, with goals that focus on people and the planet.
It's true, we sell to Europe, we sell to California. That's not our long-term strategy. We really would like to be feeding our local people and keep our product as local as we can, because it makes a lot of dollars and cents.
Harvesting plants from the sea has a long history. In some parts of Asia, sea vegetables have been food staples for more than 1,000 years. Dietary choices in some religions also further their use, and since they grew in a sea salt environment, they could be dried and stored for lengthy periods of time.
I'm Yolanda Vasquez. Still ahead, a young couple in Maryland reaches out to consumers by taking food from farm to fork.
I'm Jason Shoultz. Still ahead, we'll take you to Alabama to meet a chef who's as comfortable on the farm as he is in the kitchen. Well, maresy dotes and dozy dotes, and according to mounds and mounds of research, people should probably be eating them too. I mean, there's got to be a reason why this guy in the box is smiling, right? Oats have been shown to lower cholesterol, reduce the risk of heart disease and diabetes, and are a good source of fiber and nutrients. And we humans aren't the only ones benefiting from these tasty grains. That's because about 85% of the U.S. oat crop is used for livestock feed. Horses and cattle love the stuff. The scientific name for oats is Avena sativa. Once the tall grassy crop is harvested, the oats are cleaned and then roasted for more distinctive flavor. Next, the oats are steamed and hulled, but because the kernel is soft, the bran and germ are kept intact. That's why oatmeal is such a great source of nutrients. If you're perusing the aisles of your grocery store, you have lots of choices for oat products. Couple of choices: oat groats are the whole grain with only the husks removed. Steel cut or Irish oats are groats that have been chopped up. Old-fashioned rolled oats have been flattened by a series of rollers to help speed up the cooking time. Quick cooking oats are rolled even thinner than old-fashioned and take about 5 minutes to cook. And instant oatmeal has been pre-cooked and dried, so all it needs is hot water to rehydrate. Okay, oatmeal is low-fat, high-protein, and lowers cholesterol. What more do you want from a breakfast food? Well, how about skincare? Ancient civilizations actually used oatmeal for a whole host of skin problems, and today you can find oatmeal in a lot of products on the shelf. It's good for you both on the inside and out.
There are a large variety of farming operations in the United States. Large farms and ranches whose thousands of acres deliver grain and livestock products. But there are also small farmers whose owners have a very personal approach to reaching consumers. And here in Maryland, one young couple is doing just that. Ted Wycall and his wife Julia consider themselves at the forefront of a movement.
It's an exciting time to be a farmer. I really feel like right now, this time in the agricultural industry, that there's sort of like a renaissance going on.
The Maryland couple is one of thousands of Americans just starting out in farming.
It's a lot of work. It's definitely a lot of work. There's always something to do. There's always something to do.
Enjoy the new surroundings.
It's a career change they see as a personal approach to life and the land.
We're trying to grow as many different things as we eat here on the farm, but we do it not just for ourselves, we do it for our surrounding community.
Ted's experience as a farmer was limited. He worked for a time on a farm in Montana. But the opportunity to farm his family land got him thinking.
I moved back to Maryland from Montana. The farm was here, and I decided that it was a place that I would want to live. And then once I moved here, after living here, I decided that it was a place that I wanted to work and farm.
The Wycalls decided on organic farming as their first venture. 80 acres were readied for crops, and the couple incorporated an additional 40 acres of timber. It's a model of sustainability, often referred to as agricultural renaissance.
That's kind of like the model that when Well, it's all over the world, really, but it's kind of, I would say, what's considered like peasant farming.
The Wycall's first crops were vegetables.
This is one of 4 generations of our fall planting of broccoli and cabbage.
They soon added livestock, rotating cattle, pigs, chickens, and goats from their pasture to the woods.
We'll take an area of the forest, open it up, cut some trees, sunlight comes in, vegetation starts to grow, and then we put the goats in there, and they kind of hit a lot of the saplings, and then we put the pigs in there, and they do what they do, and then what ends up happening is that you have a really strong regrowth of oak saplings, and certain trees that can withstand the impact from the animals.
As the animals graze, manure adds nutrients to the soil.
What I'm kind of striving to do is to have a closed loop system where it'll be completely self-contained little, feedback cycle here.
Like her husband, Julia was new to farming, but her background did include food preparation and presentation.
So I'm able to bring that to the farming, to like the markets and speaking with my customers about, oh, how do you cook this? Now I have a much greater appreciation for what is really good food and, how does it grow?
Beans are on the harvest schedule this summer afternoon.
Any of those are fine. Any varieties.
The Wycall's crops make their way to farmers markets and local restaurants. They've also established a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture, where customers buy a share of the produce being raised. A small number of employees work the Wycall farm. Each crop brings new lessons in getting more from the earth and provides new recruits for a future in farming.
We have farmers that are 59, 60 years old, I think is the average age, and they have no one ready to take over their farms. And the only way that's going to turn around is if young people who are interested in it decide that it really is a possibility, it really is an option to come out and farm for a living.
The opportunity to realize a personal dream is part of the attraction on this and other small farms, planting the seeds for the future, one row at a time.
It's really exciting to be part of that, to be part of this national, if not even worldwide, kind of realization of just how productive and sustainable small farms can be, and to be a young farmer just getting started when this whole movement is just getting started.
About a third of Maryland's land is used for farming. Apples and peaches are popular picks, and much of the crop is shipped up and down the eastern seaboard. You'll find lots of members of the equine family in the Old Line State. Maryland's Department of Agriculture claims more horses per square mile than any other state in the nation.
Hi, I'm Paul Robbins, and here's something you may not have known about agriculture. Celery is one of those items in the produce department that really gets very little respect. It's not as flashy as a tomato, and frankly, it's just a little bit bland. But let me give you a little history on these stalks that might just change your mind. Most folks use celery in a salad, stir a Bloody Mary with it, or just have fun making that crunching sound when they eat it. But the ancient Greeks and Romans considered celery to have medicinal properties, and the French and Italians used it in love potions in the 17th century. Celery came to America in the 1850s, and by the turn of the 20th century, the Sears Roebuck catalog was offering a nerve tonic made from celery. California and Florida grow the lion's share of celery in the U.S., and the average American eats about 10 pounds of celery a year. That's a lot of stalks. Back to those medicinal properties. Celery is rich in B vitamins and high in vitamin C, and there's a royal tie to these green stalks. When they opened the tomb of King Tut in Egypt, they found a shroud adorned with garlands of wild celery, some vitamins for the afterlife.
It's something farmers know all too well. If you're going to work with the land, you're going to get your hands dirty. Now, not generally said about gourmet chefs, but Alabama chef Chris Hastings knows all about getting his hands dirty down on the farm. He's connecting farmers and food lovers one delicious dish at a time. Think of Chef Chris Hastings like a doctor making house calls. Today he's visiting the Jones Valley Urban Farm.
Morning, Edwin. How you feeling, buddy?
Doing good. How about you?
Great.
In the heart of Birmingham, Alabama, this agricultural enterprise uses vacant land to grow 80 different types of fruits and vegetables. Today, Executive Director Edwin Marty shares some of his baby arugula with Chris.
But yeah, this was sort of just an experiment that we threw together this winter.
Chris buys produce from Valley Urban Farm, which in turn uses it for educational programs about food and farming for city kids.
So his continued support, buying from us week after week after week throughout the entire history of Jones Valley Farm, has made it possible basically for us to continue to grow, for us to continue to have income, to turn that over to our education programs.
Using locally grown produce when he can is part of Chris Hastings' culinary philosophy. Chris says it allows him to create tastier seasonal dishes.
You get to taste the food there on the spot. You get to know about their history and whom they are, and it's just important to get to know those people.
And there's also a social benefit. Dollars stay right here in the local economy, helping out farmers like Arlie Powell at Chris's next stop, Petals of the Past Nursery.
Hey, Mr. Powell.
Good morning.
Today, Arlie is harvesting grapes.
And when this one gets this color, you can take that fruit, twist it one way, twist it the other, and it'll snap loose.
How about that? Look at that.
And you don't break the skin.
Providing local restaurants with fresh fruit in the spring and summer helps this nursery have a stable year-round income.
Restaurants are not going to take humongous amounts of fruit on any given day because of the demands of the restaurant, what they need. But when you supply them fresh fruit, and you can do it twice a week, and you have several restaurants involved, then you reach a point where it's monetarily of advantage for you to do that. Plus, the people who eat in the restaurants see our name many times on some of the menus, and they inquire as to where the fruit came from. And we have any number of visitors that have been to Chris's restaurant that come to our place as a result of that.
Chris Hastings is the owner and chef at Hot and Hot Fish Club in Birmingham. He's been serving up a seasonal menu here since the restaurant opened in 1995. Of course, not everything served here is grown locally. That would be too limiting. But he maintains relationships with around 200 farmers in the southeast U.S. to buy as close to Birmingham as possible.
We're kind of in between two seasons. We're leaving summer and we're coming into fall. So we're living in both worlds. We'll take the arugula from Jones Valley, combine it with the persimmons from Petals from the Past to make a light salad.
Hastings shares his culinary philosophy beyond the walls of this restaurant. You can also find him hosting tours for foodie tourists along Florida's so-called Forgotten Coast in the Panhandle region. Guests get to spend the week harvesting clams, oysters, and fresh produce, and then Chris prepares a feast on the last night of their adventure. It's an opportunity for him to reconnect to his roots.
I go back to the time when I was a creek boy for the family. I'd go out every day, I'd crab, I'd fish, I'd dig clams, I'd seine shrimp, bring it back home to the table. My aunts would prepare the food that I'd caught along with the beautiful vegetables from the roadside stands.
Back in Birmingham, the food is prepared and the restaurant patrons have arrived.
We have baby Japanese eggplants.
And when the chef visits diners to check on their meals, it's also an opportunity to share the story beyond the dish.
And the small farmer is the one that's really winning from this. This and the chefs, and of course, the people at the end that win are the people that get to eat the good food.
For this Southern chef, a lifelong passion for cuisine has successfully paired with his philosophy on food and community.
We've become an important part of the food community and the community at large here. You know, we feel very lucky.
Of course, the diners here are the ones who get the best reward from this menu with meaning. And that's going to do it for this time. Thanks for traveling the country with us on this edition of America's Heartland.
We're always glad when you join us. And remember, there's much more on America's Heartland on our website, including video from today's stories. Just go to americasheartland.org. We'll see you next time.
To order a copy of this broadcast, visit us online or call 1-888-814-3923. The cost is $14.95 plus shipping.
You can see it in the eyes of every woman and man in America's heartland, living close to the land. There's a love for the country and a pride in the brand in America's heartland, living close to the land.
America's Heartland is made possible by
They make up a small part of our population, but have a huge impact on our lives. They take business risks few others would tolerate, all on our behalf. They're American farmers who feed, fuel, and clothe the world. Monsanto would like to recognize them for all they do for the rest of us. Because ultimately, our success and everyone else's depends on theirs.
And by the American Farm Bureau Federation, the voice of agriculture.